Hello and welcome to the Gentleman Voice Editorial. I am the Gentleman, and this is Star Trek Into Darkness.
You think you can't make mistakes, but the choices you make could get yourself and everyone under your command killed. But I believe in you, Jim.
Now, I'm probably going to get a lot of flack from a few of my friends who do not like the rebooted Star Treks. But I like them both. A lot. I mean, they're really, in my opinion, if you don't go looking deeply for the massive flaws in the first one, it's an enjoyable movie. You sit back, you just watch it, enjoy it, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. In that way. But you can look and see a lot of the glaring flaws. But the idea of making an alternate reality so that way they could do all these new adventures, great. It's a great way to reboot a franchise instead of just replaying everything. That said, Star Trek Into Darkness is not quite a rebooted old movie. It's got its own elements, so it's not quite the same thing as the Star Trek original series with Shatner in the movies, not the show. But I really did enjoy it. And Into Darkness was a lot faster than the other one because we've already been introduced to the characters. We don't need to be reintroduced to say, okay, well, he's a Vulcan and half human. His dilemma is he has to find a balance between the two. Or Kirk saying, I want to prove myself and this is why I'm going to have to do it this way. We know who they are. So we don't need to be introduced to them anymore, and it makes it a lot quicker to get right into the story and not have any problems just going, okay, the characters are there, let's go. Engage. And, well, okay, Kirk doesn't say that, he says punch it. But I'm also a Next Gen fan, so... And so, basic story of Into Darkness, without giving away too much. If you haven't seen the trailers, then this is the information that you need. A Star Trek operative named John Harrison goes rogue and blows up an archive in London, which then causes the Starfleet Command Council to meet, where then they get attacked by the same Starfleet operative, which is actually pretty stupid considering that they know he's a Starfleet operative. If they go to the place that he knows they will have to go, but oh well. And in that struggle, several of the people get injured, a few people get killed, and Kirk gets really angry about this, and he wants to go and catch the person responsible. And so this is where Star Trek actually comes back to what it was in the original series. It is a reflection of the times, because a lot of what goes on in this movie is a reflection of when something tragic and terrible happens, how do we react? And that's what Star Trek has always been about. It's always been about showing the different sides to everything and showing this is not necessarily the right thing, but is this the right... It just goes into the deeper depths of it asks the hard questions. The hard questions that do not necessarily have any answers. And it's able to just show it in a light that allows you to consider, well, maybe we should look at this at our own lives as well, just to see. And that is one reason why I really like this movie, because it does have a very current tone and a current message that, considering the things that have happened, it resonates with a lot of people, I'm sure. Because of that, it might be a difficult one to sit through, but I would say, make the effort, because it is a good movie, it's a great movie. It just might be a bit hard if you've experienced things that we have in the past few weeks, such as well, not weeks in this case, now it's getting into months, but the bombing at the Boston Marathon. It might be a good one for a look at it saying, wow, so I can really accept how these characters are feeling because that is how I felt. But at the same time, it could bring back a lot of painful memories because of that. So consider that before going. But anyways, that's the basic story, and Kirk has to actually go to Kronos, the Klingon room. So there are Klingons in this movie. Finally, after no Klingons in the last movie, we finally have Klingons again. And he has to go to the home world of the Klingons to find John Harrison, because that's where he went fleeing to hide out. And he has to do it. It's essentially an off-the-books operation, because if he gets caught, all-out war. And that is a dangerous thing considering how powerful the Klingons are. And that is also pretty close to what the original movie series would have had, because they've been at war, or almost war, with the Klingons the whole time. So that's the basic storyline for Star Trek Into Darkness, and I have to admit, they did a lot in 2 hours, but it did not feel like 2 hours. It actually felt more like an hour and a half, and it did help I didn't actually remember to bring my watch to the theater, but even when I was sitting there, I was going, okay, I feel like a lot's happened, but I don't know what time it is, and it does not feel like it's been as long as it probably has. And I was pleasantly surprised about that, because usually a long movie means it's going to be a long movie, and it might drag. I heard on several online forums that people complain about the action overload in this movie. No, there's no action overload. There's no action overload. This is just like a normal movie. I mean, it's got an tenseness throughout the last half of the movie, but it's not necessarily an action intensity. It's danger and something going on, and then mind games, but they don't necessarily have it being just action, blowing stuff up and stuff. So in that way, I do not think that it was an action overload. Trying to think. Well, some of the things I really did not like, I guess I can go into. There's a cameo by Leonard Nimoy again. However, this cameo served little to no purpose. And in all truth, I think it should not have been in the movie. It was more distracting because we had to see the two Spocks and they were interacting with each other, and we go, okay, but why is he here? I mean, all he did actually was pass on information that Trekkies or Trekkers would know, and that does not necessarily mean. It was sort of like a, not trying to give away anything, but it was sort of a, well, it's sort of related to this thing, so go watch that movie if you want to get that side of the story, whereas you have this story to do here. And that's all I'm going to say on that matter, because if you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, based off of the trailers, you might have been able to guess what the sort of twist is, and it's one that I had figured out from the trailers also, but that's just how I picked it up. And also, there are a few things. I'll go into that later in the spoiler section, but, so, another thing that sort of annoyed me was, there's a part where Carol Marcus, I don't know who plays her, sorry, but, she's changing into different clothes while Kirk is there, and Kirk was told to turn around, and then he turns around and he's openly looking at her, and it's like, and then the camera just cuts over there and looks also. It's clearly, it's just something that the fans are supposed to enjoy and say, oh look, hot woman, yay. Granted, she is very attractive, but it was an unnecessary moment in the whole movie, and we've already seen that side of Kirk, so it was not exactly building character for Kirk, because Kirk, we've already seen, actually earlier in the movie, he's in bed with a couple of aliens and alien women, and it's just, okay, that's enough to show that he's a womanizer. And we see she's almost going to flirt with somebody before he gets interrupted, and okay, we get that he's a womanizer. Here, it was clearly just the fans, well, there you go, Carol Marcus in a bikini, yay! And we didn't really need it. So, while that was just a small, minor problem, I mean, all I have right now are minor problems. You'll get my more in-depth look a little bit later. But, that was one of the things that just made me pause and go, we didn't need it at all. Well, I can talk about the villain in this movie, Benedict Cumberbatch. I'm sorry if I'm saying his name wrong, I most likely am. But he was really good. As John Harrison, he was a really, really good actor. I think that... I can't talk about that part of it, but I think that he managed to bring something to the role that was a good intensity, and while he's not as good as some Star Trek villains, he was a good Star Trek villain. Better than the last one, at least, because Nero was a little bit bland. He's only got a few sides. This character is interesting. And as he says, he's, well, let's just play that clip.
I am better. At what? Everything.
So he's better at everything, and in all truth, it shows, because his character is brilliant, his character is strong, he's like a super character, and considering that the overtones that were trying to be played up into this movie, it worked really well. So, I really enjoyed his performance. I think he did great. Not as good as some villains, but great nonetheless. And there was also a few touching scenes in this movie. One's at the end I can't really explain in this section, so I'll explain it later. But one was also at the very beginning, where we're following a Star Trek command family, and they go to the hospital to visit their daughter who's dying, and then they don't have any dialogue at this point. It's just a piano playing, and it's really good. They don't need the dialogue to show that their daughter is dying. And actually that's what sets off a whole bunch of the different problems in the movie for the characters to deal with, not that I had to deal with. And it was really well done. If they did that also for the later touching scene, I think it would have been a lot better. But I'm not going to complain, because everything did work together. So that's what I have to say about Star Trek Into Darkness, and it was good. I enjoyed it a lot, and, well, I am tempted to go see it again, just because I enjoyed it that much. What I will also add is, there's a point in the end that it just, that at about 15 or so minutes until the end, there's going to be a part where some people will either like it a lot or hate it. I'm in the middle, and I'll explain why in the spoiler section, but it works, but it was something that was a little bit distracting and a little bit disappointing, but I'll go into that there. But Star Trek Into Darkness, great movie. Enjoyed it. Casting was great, acting was great, story was great, no action overload, even though it is an action movie, and the political overtones and the hard questions that it asks, great. So if you are thinking about going to see this, I recommend doing so, because it is a great, great movie. And now, for those of you who do not want spoilers, this is the time to leave, because I'm about to go into greater depth about some things that really, really need to be talked about, at least. So, thank you for watching, and if you are leaving, cheerio and farewell. If you are staying, I'll see you in a few seconds. Welcome back to the Star Trek Into Darkness editorial. I am now sitting actually at a different location because I need to use my computer to, I think, further prove my argument on one of these issues. So I'm just sitting over here, and I'm going to go ahead and begin. So, if you don't know, Khan is the villain. John Harrison is actually Khan, which was a really good twist, and the way that they did it in the media is really good, because it starts out with the rumors that maybe it's going to be Khan who's the villain, and then that slowly fades away into the background, and all we get is, well, we got John Harrison, and everyone's going, okay, who's John Harrison? Who is he? So they did a really good switch there where John Harrison turns out to be Khan, and that actually works out to the movie's favor, because Cumberbatch is a really good Khan. And so I was thrown off by that. even though I knew in the trailer that it sounded like it would be Khan because he's saying things like, well, actually I played the clip earlier, let's just play it again.
I am better at what? Everything.
However, the problem then is for the writers, they have to try and keep it from sounding a lot like Wrath of Khan, which they did really well until they got to the end. So I'm going to queue up a clip of that, so that way I can demonstrate how this does not work in their favor, because they do the whole 15 minutes at the end, not the whole, what, 10 minutes of that? I'm going to be doing a play-by-play thing here, so you're going to get a picture of my face as I'm watching this, and then you're also going to get the film also, so I can say, okay, that was there, and I'm going to describe it scene by scene, essentially.
Engine room. Well done, Scotty.
That was sort of there.
I think you better get down here.
That was there almost word for word, said by a different character.
All right.
And the look over, no, the look over was not really there, but...
Take the call.
So then the character goes down to the engine room. I'll get no shot of a Genesis planet. But, yeah, the run to the hallway, that shot is there. The Genesis planet, again, is not. So then, running down to get to the engine room, everyone, or one person at least is standing there, sees them there, and then it's like, no, you can't go in, and then...
You'll flood the whole compartment.
Yes, this is here, almost exact.
It's too late.
Now the whole different thing here is actually that it's not Kirk on the outside, it's Spock. Because Kirk, in this alternate reality, is the one who goes running in to save it. So there's the glass separating them, and Kirk is inside, Spock is outside, and they stand at the door there like that, and so they have a conversation through the glass in the engine place, where Kirk had to do essentially what Spock did in Wrath of Khan. And
Out of danger.
yeah, because what Kirk says is ship, and then Spock says out of danger, so it's almost the same lines, just reversed. So there's a lot of similarities in this whole scene, and for the most part, it gets a little bit distracting. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is a very touching scene, because what they do change is they make it into a very heartbreaking discussion between Kirk and Spock as Kirk is dying. Kirk's like, I am afraid. I'm afraid of dying. Help me not be afraid. And Spock, he's crying. And it is one of the most heartbreaking scenes in the whole movie. I mean, the first part where they had to know, when I mentioned in the first section that there was a part where the girl is dying and it's no fun dialogue at all, and it's still very touching. This is touching, and then you also get Uhura and Scotty and their reactions to the whole thing, which is great. They convey a lot with that. However, my complaint still stands that it's a little bit too similar to Wrath of Khan, and because of that, I think that it does not necessarily work in their favor. I know that they wanted it to represent it, so that way there would be the parallel connections, but they didn't need it. I mean, they even actually have a part in here where, let me see, where is it? It's one of the iconic scenes where they put the hands on the glass, and Spock does that, and Kirk tries to as he's dying, and then Kirk dies, which really, really touching, but so similar. And actually, I forgot to start recording that, so I'm going to have to record that separately. Yeah, I failed, but let me see. But it was a really touching scene. I'm not going to say it was terrible, but for some people who are more Star Trek purists than I am, they will most likely not like it. If you're not aware of the series, you'll like it. But for me, who is aware of it and does enjoy both aspects of it, it's not so bad. I just was a little bit distracted by it. And what happens after is really, really distracting because there's, of course, everyone, even if you're probably not a Trekker, knows about the over-the-top Shatner line of Khan! Well, this time it's not Kirk saying it, it's Zachary Quinto, Spock. And it's right after Kirk dies, and he's like, Khan! It's just so... When Shatner did it, it was over the top. But when they put it in here, my reaction in the theater was just... because it was over the top, it was ridiculous, and it was unnecessary. It's meant to convey the whole pain that he's going through, I know, but... I'm going to actually say something that I would never say about anything else, but Shatner did it better. And considering that I do not care for Shatner's performance as Kirk, that is saying quite a bit. And yeah, so it's an over-the-top line, but between the two, Shatner's is definitely better and more iconic. And the fact that I just threw it in here was just distracting in a really, really moment. So that was also going against it. But the last thing I'll talk about that kind of bothered me a little bit was how they showed how Kirk was going to be revived. Because they have a cutaway in the middle of the entire movie where Kirk goes to medical center where they're holding Khan, and he said, okay, well, I need your help, and why am I going to help you? And then he's like, well, you're going to help me because, well, if you don't, bad things are going to happen. And then in the middle of their conversation, they cut away and it's like, Bones, what are you doing? And he goes on, I'm testing things with Khan's blood because these Trevels died and I want to see if maybe they can be brought back with Khan's blood. It's like, okay, now you were going to help me. Okay, I'll help you. That whole cutaway was really, really distracting. And actually, in my opinion, unnecessary. Because we've seen Khan's blood work. When they were, at the beginning, when that touching scene with the piano, and that was a beautiful scene, Khan tells the Starfleet person that I will heal her. I can heal her. And so he uses his blood to save her, and then just has that Starfleet guy blow up the archives. But the whole point of that was it shows that Khan's blood is a regenerative, almost regenerative serum, which will save people's lives. I mean, instead of showing the Trevels come back to life in the movie, why not just show what happens to the girl in a small scene after the explosion, so you get the, oh no, so he kills himself to save her, and that makes sense. I mean, we got that still, but they would have transferred over the whole idea that, oh, well, the blood is regenerative, so we're not in trouble. Whereas now they had to bring in the little Trevels that died, and what the hell's a Treble? But the creature dies, Bones injected with Khan's blood, and then at the end, after Kirk dies, the Treble suddenly is alive again, and he's like, quick, put him in the cryogenic tube, and then we gotta get Khan's blood to revive him. It's like, my question, you have 72 torpedoes full of other augmented people who are just like Khan. Why not use their blood? Why is Khan's blood the only one that can save him? From what I saw, these are all people who are just like Khan. I mean, they're his crew, but they're all supposed to be augmented people. And I was confused as to why they couldn't just do that, because I mean, Bones is even saying, take this guy out of his tube and make him sure he's in a coma, because we need to put Kirk into that tube to keep him from losing any brain function. It's like, okay, yeah, but why did it have to be Khan's blood? Maybe I missed something. Well, I'm pretty sure they never addressed why it needed to be Khan's blood, and That's just a small little nitpick. I mean, all these are nitpicks at this point, but I do feel that the ending could have been stronger if they didn't have to throw in the trebles, if they didn't have to riff off of Wrath of Khan. I think it could have been a lot better. And while Benedict Cumberbatch did a really good job, he's still not what's the guy's name? Ricardo Montalban, because let's face it, the original is almost always better in every case. Almost every case. In this case, in this movie, there are several cases where the original Star Trek movies didn't have as good actors or anything, and I like the newer versions better. But while Cumberbatch did a great job and made us see a different kind of Khan, I still like the original Khan. But they're both good. So, yeah, that's all I have to say about this. And thank you all very much for watching my video. I hope that you enjoy Star Trek Into Darkness. If you have any comments to say about it, post them, create a discussion. I'm really open, and I'd like to actually discuss it with people who watch it. So, thank you for watching. Cheerio, and farewell.
No ship should go down without her captain.
I believe in you, Jim.